2004, the time when Mark Zuckerberg realized that Facebook was not a muffin anymore. Zuckerberg really understood that Facebook had a greater potential than just being a simple social platform for students. So, he wanted to expand Facebook, but he did not have the necessary connections, for after all, he was a 22-year-old who operated a website from his dorm room. But that's okay, because that's where Sean Parker comes in the story. For anyone who has watched the Social Network movie knows who Sean Parker is. If not, he is the guy who envisioned Facebook to be a bigger entity, or in other words,
$1 billion valuation.
Yeah, $1 billion company. But David, how is this anyway related to Peter Thiel? Well, remember how I told you about Zuckerberg's need for connections to expand Facebook? Right, the first ever outside investment to Facebook was arranged by Sean Parker himself, who brought in Peter Thiel as an investor.
Sean, wait, come on in. Must be Mark.
Hi. We took a look at everything and congratulations. We're going to start you off with a $500,000 investment.
And he eventually invested $500,000 into Facebook, which turned out to be one of the greatest investments ever. But how great was that? Born in Frankfurt, Germany, Thiel moved to the USA when he was just a year old. Then he went to Stanford to study philosophy, but later acquired a law degree, and also he was a world-ranked chess player in his early age, which according to GQ inspired some of his business strategies. And I guess that's enough history of Thiel. But the question is, how did a guy who studied law went on to invest in tech companies? And even if he did, where did the money come from? Well, initially after working as a clerk for a judge, Thiel took a turn in his career and became a derivatives trader at Credit Suisse Group. That's where he made enough money to launch his own financial tech startup, Confinity. And Confinity basically facilitated online transactions, and this company right here would somewhat serve as a landmark for Peter Thiel's future. Because for anyone who knows about the early life of Elon Musk would have probably heard about Confinity. Alright, I understand I'm putting a lot of facts here, so let me do my best to explain this. When Peter Thiel was running Confinity, at the same timeline, Elon Musk was running something called X.com. And apparently, both of these companies had similar functions. So, in the best of interest, Confinity of Peter Thiel and X.com of Elon Musk merged together to form what you call today as PayPal. So I hope you get it now. During this time, eBay saw the potential of PayPal and acquired the company for an estimated $1.5 billion, resulting in a huge payout for Peter Thiel and, Elon Musk as well. But keeping our focus on Thiel for now, he pocketed $55 million in the payout, so that's basically how Peter Thiel became rich. Now, with all the money he had, Thiel turned into an angel investor, which means investing in startups and companies which were turned down by big venture capital firms. And some of his notable investments include LinkedIn, Yelp, SpaceX, and even Airbnb. And the CEO of LinkedIn at the time was Reid Hoffman. Now, David, why are you talking about LinkedIn out of nowhere? Well, that's because I did miss something when I was telling you about Facebook's first ever investment. You see, Sean Parker did not have any direct relationship with Peter Thiel. But at first, he went to Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn CEO, and he introduced him to Peter Thiel. And you know what happened next. He initially invested $500,000 in 2004, but later, when Facebook got bigger, he put another $12.7 million in 2006, totaling a $13 million investment as a whole. So, here's the part we've been waiting for. How big was the return really? Well, according to Fortune, in 2012, when Facebook went public, Thiel owned 44.7 million shares, out of which he sold 36.8 million shares, and that's almost all of it. And when he did that, he received $1.04 billion to be exact. And even if you ignore the remaining shares, still Peter Thiel turned a $13 million investment into a return upwards of $1 billion. That's basically a 10,000% return on his investment. But what's more interesting is how all this money led him to create different venture capital firms. For instance, he has 3 venture capital firms in his portfolio. Founders Fund, Mithras Capital, Clarium Capital. I mean, this guy literally has different venture capitals depending on the genre of the companies. Meaning, look, Founders Fund invests in companies of new idea compared to Mithras Capital, which invests in companies in the stage of its middle growth. But the one company that stands atop of Peter Thiel's list is Planter, and I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me. To explain Planter would take a long time, so a basic idea would be that it specializes in data gathering and analysis. In a nutshell, a lot of data mining and analyzing it to find solutions to problems. For instance, like anticipating terrorist attacks that through analysis of vast data that government agencies such as CIA provide.
It means that if there is another 9/11, it'll be your fault.
And look at this, interestingly they have an unverified claim that Planter helped to track down Osama bin Laden in 2011. And if they did, great, but still it's unverified. But David, why is this company such a big deal? Why are you making a big deal out of it?
That's my secret, Cat.
Government contracts. Planter has contracts with the CIA, Space Force, and the US Army. In fact, CIA was one of the first initial investors of Planter through its VC firm, which means venture capital firm, In-Q-Tel. That's right, CIA has its own VC arm.
What the hell are you?
Now, coming back, Planter does have private contracts as well, with banks which help to protect their banking system from threats, but that's only a small picture. And then look at what Bloomberg Businessweek calls Planter, an indispensable tool employed by the US intelligence in warfare against terrorism. I mean, that's a strong claim. And that's how big and vital this company is. I mean, consider the valuation for instance. In 2010, the company was valuated at $1 billion, but now, with escalated reputation, it stands at $20 billion. And apart from that, I hope you guessed this one. The company has become much more crucial amidst the coronavirus. It is taking over data-related needs of the government and processing those huge large data which is being gathered through tests. And this can push Peter Thiel's net worth atop. And there's a reason why I'm saying that. It's because it's in the talks of offering an IPO. And the timing, it could not be better. And I'm simply mean it when I say that. So that pretty much sums up the professional life of Peter Thiel. And I don't want to get into the personal life of Peter Thiel, but for a fact, I would like to say this. He claims himself as a strong libertarian. And I'll tell you why I wanted to bring this up. See, libertarian means a guy who basically believes that the involvement of government in people's day-to-day lives should be minimalist. But on the contrary, he's co-founded a company which literally thrives on intruding the private data of people. I mean, I'm not against the idea of tracking down terrorists through the data mining. It's great as long as you don't misuse the data. Who does not love eradicating terrorism? But doesn't it seem a bit odd when your actions contradict your beliefs? Let me know what you guys think. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one.